McGuire, welcome.
Thank you for having me. What's happening?
Well, we're just talking to folks tonight, and we want to, get a sense of where you're coming from when it comes to streets and bikes. And let me just give you a quick intro for the crew. We still have a lot of people online, and Ray has worked in finance recently as head of global corporate and investment banking at Citigroup. He's on the board of a fair amount of educational and cultural organizations. Now he's running for mayor of the city of New York. I actually worked, on setting up City Bike for the city government back in the day when we were establishing that. I had a lot of good times over at Citigroup with the marketing crew and Ed Schuyler and some of the executive folks who were doing that. And totally good bike placement. Look at that. You win tonight on the bike placement.
I love that bike, man. I love that bike.
So I've seen some stuff about you, some of the things you've said about streets. Although I haven't seen a transportation policy per se that you've put out. Is that something that's still to come?
Yeah, we're still working on it. It's so complex, and the thing that I spend time on in each of these policies is actually talking to the people who live it. So this is not something that's done in the academy or in the laboratory. It's actually heavily informed by the people whose lives are the most impacted. So this is,
we definitely look forward to that, and we'll help to get it around. Once we put it out, we want people to see what you and other candidates are saying. So in some of the stuff you have said, though, you've talked about riding your bike, riding the bike that we see there, riding City Bike. Tell us a little bit about Ray McGuire, New York City bike rider.
Ray McGuire, New York City bike rider, is someone who enjoys getting across town and even up and downtown on a bike. It is much easier for me to do that if I were to go from anywhere across Midtown. The easiest way to do this is to hop on, if I don't have my own bike, it's to hop on a city bike. That's easy, it's effective. You need to have the app to figure out what their spaces are to park it. So that it stays where it's parked, and you need to figure out where you can pick one up. But I think one of the greatest things that we've done in this city is to add City Bike and to expand the bike lanes. So I'm excited about it. I use them a lot, and that's how I think about it.
So one of our big issues now is, and it's sort of a Rorschach test here behind me, is we're doing a lot of bike lanes. We're having a lot of community battles over getting these bike lanes in. But these are what the city calls protected bike lanes. There's two different designs that the current administration has tried, and they're still full of cars and trucks. So I don't know, what's your experience with, we have different designs coming from different eras and for different street types, and some of them work really well, and some of them look like this. What's your just sort of personal point of view when it comes to actually riding in town, and how long have you been riding for? Because it has changed in quality, so I'm curious about that.
Well, the whole experience has changed. I think City Bike brought on a whole level of new activity, introduced a whole new set of riders. And then when you kind of ride that, as I've done for quite some time, almost since its inception. So when I, get my own bike so that I can, at least on the weekends when I'm not going across town and don't need to park it permanently, even when I do, I got a pretty good lot. It's been important. It's important. So I think, listen, having bikes and what bikes provide: less crowding in subways, less automobile traffic, less CO2, other pollutants, healthier New York, stronger economy. I'm all in for bikes. I'm supportive of bikes.
You were quoted at least either in Streets Blog or Central Brooklyn Independent Democratic Forum, or maybe both. Maybe they were sort of going off each other. But you said, "I will reimagine our streets in ways that create more public space, improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists, create space for restaurants and other small businesses, reduce congestion, increase sustainability." Have you been able to elaborate on that sort of general point of view yet?
The general point of view is, the specifics behind that have to do with outdoor space and creating outdoor spaces. I have had a long-standing view that outdoor spaces bring us together. They allow us to experience nature in a way that is so vital to who we are. Growing up in a park, riding a bike, I grew up in a neighborhood where we didn't have a lot. With my single mother and my two brothers, my grandparents raising my two brothers and me, and half a dozen foster children at one point in time. I felt such a difference in my life when I had a bicycle and where I could go around the neighborhood on a bicycle. I can remember going on that bicycle with my friends and we could go and explore. So bicycles and outdoor spaces allow you to do that. I rode around the park, I rode around the neighborhood, probably rode to some places I shouldn't have been, but I got out of there pretty quickly with the bike. And so it gives you a certain mobility,
Yeah.
gives you the ability to explore. So yes, I'm telling you how I grew up. And so how I grew up informs how I will govern and informs how I think about outdoor spaces.
Have you taken a look at some of the issues around sort of expanding the bike lanes, better connecting them? The space trade-offs that are required and some of the, the arguments and some of the even procedural issues that, we're seeing now with, with communities, city government and, thinking a little bit about how governance can change, under your leadership?
I think we need to be more inclusive in government, and especially when it comes to opportunities like this. We need to get people in the communities at the table, and that includes bikers. It means all the people who are involved in the communities need to be at the table as we design the city of the future. Outdoor spaces, including bicycle lanes and how we interact with outdoor spaces. When the design of Central Park, redesign of Central Park is one great example of what Gordon Davis was able to do as he redesigned Central Park. Look at that park now and look at the kind of experiences that we have in the Great Chiefs Meadow around the park with bicycles. I don't go down to the north side of the park because coming back up those hills is not the easiest thing, but I will cut off. I cut off early, and on occasion when I'm feeling really ambitious.
Yeah, the old 102nd Street strategy. We know that.
That's exactly right. I cut across, man. I cut across. I'm okay with that now.
No, it sounds like from when you're talking about what a bike meant to you growing up, you think there's an equity case or an equity contribution that a better and more inclusive biking, environment can provide?
Absolutely, yes. It took me into places that I would have never gone. I would have not otherwise explored. You just simply get into the park and get into the court. You take your bike and you can do this and you have some level of independence, but you also are able to explore. You go from one neighborhood to the next neighborhood. Or in my case, I did that, but I also, I took my bike past the Dayton Art Institute. I didn't know anything about it. Now reflecting on it, my experience with the Dayton Art Institute was having rode my bike by it. And so it became a landmark that I otherwise would have driven by, maybe. I certainly would have walked by because it's too far from my neighborhood. And at the time, we had limited car service. I mean, we didn't have a lot of cars in the family. And so the only way you got around was, I guess you could use the bus, or you could walk, or you could take a bike. And me and my friends all took bikes. That's the only way we got out of the neighborhood. That's, I could get outside of my backyard and through the alley on a bike. And so, yes, there's, as you think about equity, if equity is exposing us to the opportunities and possibilities, then by definition, bikes allow us to do that.
One of the sort of quality concerns we've been pointing out is our separation from traffic isn't that great in a lot of these newer protected bike lanes. And there are some city operations that sort of keep them further open. So there are some governance issues there. But one of the other things, we really see is the city's not replicating the things that are really drawing people out very much. Back around 2000, we rebuilt the West Side Highway and put in the process the busiest bike path in the United States. And we're only doing small chunks of that. And I don't know if you've gotten to ride bikes in other places as you travel for work or et cetera, but one of the things that really stands out to me is cities that are coming late to these sort of sustainable street strategies, like London and Paris, are building like real infrastructure with concrete and stone and steel, while we're trying to paint our way to it. And we've been trying to shift that conversation a bit. But I don't know any reaction to that in terms of just allowing more people to participate by making truly safe bike lanes, and can we look forward to that?
The answer is yes. If you look at my infrastructure plan, I plan to reimagine New York City streetscapes. And as part of that plan, it's reducing free on-street parking in commercial areas just to make certain that we're focused on the outdoor experience. You cited London and you cited Paris. The other factor that you should take into consideration, that we need to take into consideration, is the advent of scooters. And how do the scooters impact the bike lanes, and how are we thinking about that?
Yeah, I don't think there's any strategy now.
Paris is a bit more developed, having experienced bicycling in a lot of major cities outside of the US. The one that has truly protected bike lanes is London. And so you see the cyclists in the morning commuting to work, and in the afternoon commuting home, obviously. Paris is a little different because people cite Paris, and one of the things you note about Paris is the number of underground garages that exist in Paris. Mm. And we have the advent of scooters in Paris and bicycles in Paris. But as we think about these bike lanes, we also have to accommodate for what we do with the advent of scooters, because they're coming, and how do we protect ourselves in these bike lanes? So yes, we can imagine more protective bike lanes, which we should have, but we also should make certain that we have regulations that have us think through the advent of scooters and more bicycles to make it a safe experience.
So I don't know if you've dug into some of the public process, issues that we have today with, say, community boards, or sort of just thought about how you frame this for the city. If we're going to do more of this, if we're going to connect bike lanes, through areas they don't exist today, if we're going to, have to impact parking in places where we need more bike lanes, or wider bike lanes, or more physically separated bike lanes, whatever the case may be. It's a fair amount of change for people. So how do you frame it as a leader, but then how do you send the troops out to sort of, do the work in the neighborhoods? And, and if you haven't thought about the role of community boards, it's fair, but it's definitely something coming for you if you become mayor.
The answer is, Jon, we have to do what we haven't done for major initiatives like this before. First of all, the mayor has to set it as a priority. And then the mayor needs also to empower the boroughs and the communities and ask them to come back with a plan, because what we haven't done with major projects like this before is involve the people who are going to be most impacted. We prescribed and we haven't included. And my leadership would mean that we would get the right leaders in the communities. And if we have to go down by neighborhoods, let's get it down to the neighborhood level, because that's where people's lives are going to be most impacted, and have an overall vision for what we want to accomplish, and then empower those people to come up with a plan for that vision. To have a prescription is going to generate lots of reaction, and we see what that has resulted in. It resulted in us continuing to delay in a lot of the success in forward movement on a lot of these projects. Get the community involved first. Set out a vision, get the community involved to execute on that vision, or to give you their response to that vision, and then let's come up with a plan that serves the most of us, because not everybody's going to be satisfied. But I will set that as a priority, then have the people who are closest to this come up with a plan on how they want the community to be impacted. It's not one size fits all.
Great, thank you. Let me just shift a little bit. We talked about, an equity case for a more bikeable city. And you were at Citigroup when that company decided they had a business case for backing the city's bike share system, and they continue to back it as it gets bigger. And it's, far bigger than it was. It's far bigger today than it was in 2013 when it launched. Do you see a business case for the city at large in being more bike friendly, more pedestrian friendly, less car dependent?
And is there a case for that? Is that the question?
Is there a business case for it, in terms of economic recovery?
Yes.
And thriving after we recover?
The business case, I don't want to say it's simple, but it should be relatively straightforward. The business case is health, right? So in what it does is it obviously has an impact on many of the pre-existing conditions. The more we can incite and invite people to be healthy, the better off we're going to be. It prevents many of the non-communicable diseases, obesity, type 2 diabetes, coronary heart disease, and some types of cancers. So that, from a purely commercial standpoint, decreases the burden that it has on the overall healthcare system. And when it comes to businesses, yes, if we have more of our workers who want, and we're trying to invite them to come back to the office, one of the ways to do that is to make certain that they have easier access to the office. And one of the ways to do that is to make certain that they can bike to the office if they so choose. And one of the ways to do that is to make certain we have appropriate parking spaces for those bikes. That helps me grow especially my small businesses. It helps me grow that because I'm meeting my talent where my talent is.
This might be a little random, but and let me know if it is. But I've noticed in your endorsements, like you have Patrick Ewing who's endorsed you, and Oakley, and you seem like you're pretty connected to the NBA. And so I just wanted to mention that, there's a lot of NBA greats who are actually bike riders. Mm-hmm. And if we could get I've never seen a better spokesperson for bicycling than LeBron James. And he did that amazing thing in January, right before, and I think it got kind of lost in the shuffle of the pandemic because it was right before that. But he bought bike share memberships for older teenagers all over the country, including here in New York, and he launched it in Harlem. And, you just, since you have those connections, I couldn't imagine, a better kind of way to get attention to this stuff than having someone like that, come back and talk about it again, because he was riveting the first time.
Let me be clear about our bias towards the NBA.
Okay.
So our bias towards the NBA happens to be with our 20-year-old who was drafted first round into the NBA and now is the starting point guard for the Orlando Magic.
Oh, there you go.
So we have an association with the NBA, which is personal. It's family.
Oh, that's fantastic.
We're so fortunate that those great legends of the Knicks and other sports team, the Knicks and the Giants have decided to step up and endorse us. So there's a clear recognition that athletics and health and biking as part of the overall athletic undertaking is critical to our well-being. So yes, whatever I can do to sponsor this and to get people to help sponsor this, I'm all in.
Okay. I mean, I also noticed Reggie Miller joined the governing board of USA Cycling, which runs the sports side of cycling. But I don't know if that gets your votes in New York.
I don't know, man. After, those 3-pointers were lethal.
We always respected his game, even if we didn't like it.
Those 3-pointers were lethal, man. Why'd you bring up Reggie Miller? Why'd you do that, man?
The guy rides a bike. I can't.
He's riding a bike, but come on, you take him right. I get you what you're doing, man. I get that. I got loyalty to bikes, man. But the Knicks, you got to step up here.
Well, I mean, look, Derrick Rose has been known to be spotted on a bike here and there too. So
okay, I'm good with that. But Derrick Rose is good. He's with us now. Reggie Miller never been with us, man.
We always respected his game, though.
I don't know if he's biked around New York or not, but we got to give him his props because he has some game. But come on, man, seriously.
All right. Well, anything else you'd like to spotlight in this area? I mean, really appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness on these issues.
Listen, what I will tell you is that I think it's important. But the other thing that I think that you should do that we haven't talked about when it gets to equity is, why don't we set up bike programs for many of the kids who otherwise wouldn't have access to bike? Teach them how to ride a bike. And I know there's some examples of different initiatives that you all have taken on. But I think if you sponsor this and create the kind of relationships, public-private partnerships, where you can make biking as it grows in its importance and as it integrates into more of our communities, make certain the kids can ride the bikes. Make certain that biking is inclusive. And as part of that, begin early to train these kids on how we should ride bikes. Don't assume that they're going to have the same opportunities that kids across the city are going to have the same opportunities, because that's not the case. And being out front on equity in bicycling, the way you've talked about it, the impact that you can have is going to be so fundamental to how these kids explore and how we think about ourselves and how we interact with each other. Just who can get to the park and how do they get there?
Well, I'm glad you raised that. I mean, we have actually set up a program that the city's embraced, but it's only in about 26 middle schools right now. And we will need the mayor's help to scale that, because there's hundreds of those schools.
You got it.
Okay.
I knew you had something, but listen, I'm so wed to this. in my neighborhood, not a lot of people running around. I mean, I had a chopper, a purple chopper, man, and I wanted a mini bike, but I didn't get that mini bike. But I know the importance it had to me. Biking was just part of my growing up, and biking can be so much a part of how our kids grow up. That hey, you're right in focusing on it. If it's only in 26 places, we have to quadruple, quintuple that.
Yeah, no, and it's a kind of a cobbled together thing. I mean, we need to get the school system back on its feet, of course, but it's not even funded by the education department at this point. And so we're going to need to, to really make it a little more fundamental.
We can get public-private partnerships here to work on this. And I would encourage you to have that as one of your top priorities and get the cyclists into the communities and teach our kids how to ride.
Yeah, no, I mean, the places that are truly bike friendly in the world, you can tell that the car drivers has been trained as bicyclists because they don't
exactly right.
They don't menace you,
Right. So I would encourage you to do that, and you should expect that I would be a huge supporter of that. I'd be out front on that, and if I have to ride my bike to City Hall against some of the people think that I shouldn't, I'll do that. Okay, alrighty.
Well, yeah, we saw Pete Buttigieg riding to work in DC the other day. So if the transportation secretary can do it.
I got that. I'm okay with that. I ain't the transportation secretary, not going for that, but I'm going all in for NYC.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
All right. That's what we want. Ray McGuire, candidate for mayor. Good guy. Thank you for a good conversation. We'll see you on the street. We'll see you in the campaign.
All righty. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Ride safely.
We will. Thank you.